what went wrong on the 7th of October. So you can on the tactical level, you can say we didn't listen to the observers. We didn't we used too much technology. Our intelligence was based on signal intelligence and not human intelligence. But I think there are but that's on the tactical level. I think that the big mistake that we had is two things which are against the nature of war. The nature of war means that you can't win a war on defense. You can't win a war with standoff with air force and artillery and missiles. At the end, it's a question of friction. Clausewitz said that many hundreds of years ago. The second is that there'll always be a fog of war. The best intelligence there'll always be something missing. You can't rely only on intelligence. But that's, let's say, on the strategic level. But I think there's even one level which is much higher, which is not only the army, which is also the nation. We didn't really understand who our enemy is, and we don't really understand who we are. And those are the two things that have to be fixed after the war. And I think we're in the right direction. Again, it's a painful wake-up call. And people many times see that Israel is a split society. In other words, this doesn't get along with that, and there are protests. But one of the nice things, which is the cohesion in the reserves, it's the mosaic of the Israeli society, and I think we're one of the things that we're doing now is and that might be one of the things. There's a word which is even used in English, which is called tikkun. One of the things that's going to be fixed is to try to change our common fate to our common goal and common destiny.
I want to go to what you just said about we didn't know who our enemy was or who we are. Can you maybe elaborate, say, on both pieces? Let's start with the enemy. What didn't we know? There's been fighting, death, tragedy, crisis in Israel for decades and decades. What did we learn about the enemy we didn't know, or that Israel didn't know?
I think that we try to evade the fact that, again, they're motivated by religion. They're motivated, they know who they're fighting for, and they know why they're fighting. And when you ask them from an 8-year-old child, you'll go into Shechem, he knows exactly what he wants. And we talk about asymmetric warfare. So the truth is, also with the Hezbollah and also with the Hamas, when you look at the technology, we're up here, they're down there. And if we weren't on camera, I'd even go make it even a bigger distance between the two hands. But when we're talking about until the war, the resolve, then maybe they're here and we're there. They want to win, they want victory, and we want quiet, and that can't work. And we have to understand what their motivation is. And if we don't understand their motivation, it's not a question of many times we think that poverty brings terrorism. No, ideology brings terrorism, and that we have to understand. And it's not something which is always rational and Western. And no, giving them the good life. When you take a look, let's for an example, we're the suicide bombers. If you ask a lame person on the street who doesn't know not much about terror, let's say they're uneducated, they're living in poverty, but the facts are the opposite. They were educated and they were living a relatively good life. So, and that brought them to terror. And that brought them. This ideology brought them to terror. That's talking about the enemy. And if we don't understand their core motives and what makes them tick, then we're not able to understand the enemy. When in one of my previous positions, I was the executive office in the 210th Division in the Golan Heights when there was a big civil war in Syria, and they were talking about it. It came as a surprise, like many things in the army came as a surprise, and there was ISIS affiliated fighting against Al Qaeda affiliated. And with all this tumult going on, and of course they had the Hezbollah in the north, and the way we had intelligence briefings and saying what they're planning to do and their plans, and we had also some humans. I said, listen, I want to know what they're talking about in the mosques. Because when you understand what they're preaching to the public, you can understand the tensions in the society. So that's understanding the enemy. In other words, if we won't really understand that they're motivated by ideology and not to capture territory that has minerals or things, or just it's not territorial. It's much more. It's much deeper.
Now,
And
just going on that for a second, if I can, most Israelis live in the center of the country, Tel Aviv, Haifa, Modi'in area. Whereas when you come out to Peduel and you're surrounded by Arab villages, do you think that makes a difference in terms of how most Israelis potentially relate to the enemy, versus people who live in the Shomron and have more access and understanding?
that's a great question. You took for granted that the center of the country is Tel Aviv. Maybe the center of the country is Jerusalem.
Right, fair.
And maybe that's the major question. Are we a country of Tel Aviv, or are we a country of Jerusalem, even before living in Judea and Samaria? I think when we're talking about our past, there's no question that the center of our country is Jerusalem. I think when we're gonna try to analyze Jewish history, the history of Israel in 200 years, and we're going to talk about milestones. So I think we're going to have three major milestones in the 75. We're close to the Independence Day, Yom Ha'atzmaut. The first milestone definitely is 1948. The third milestone definitely is October 7th, or I rather call it Shmini Atzeret, a year and a half ago. Because everything's going to change. We're in the process of change. I think we're going to fix up a lot of things that have to be fixed. And I skipped the second milestone. The second milestone is the Six-Day War. Because we had, until the Six-Day War, there's no question that Tel Aviv was a center. Jerusalem, Hebron, Shechem, Judea and Samaria, that's what it's in it, was part of Jordan. And somehow in the Six-Day War, it suddenly became part of Israel. The Israeli society, also the government, didn't know how to deal with their past. Jews many times have problems dealing with their past. So that's the second milestone. I think part of the big change that now they were much more on the offensive in Judea and Samaria is as a result of what we learned on the 7th of October. And that goes back to the second part of your question, which I didn't answer, on who we are.
Right.
And we have to understand who we are. I think we have to connect to our past. We have to connect to what does it mean to be Jewish. It's more than halakha, and it's more than eating gefilte fish and eating matzah and Pesach. It's to bring significance of who our identity is. If we don't know who we are, then again, in a world which is ultra liberal, which is postmodern, we won't have the resolve to fight unless we know who we are. That'll bring the resolve, and that'll bring again turning fate.
Now let's talk about the issue of the drafting the Ultra-Orthodox, and not only why that has an impact on society in Israel, but on the IDF itself. Meaning, what is the lacking in the IDF right now that this would serve to fix a problem, either now or in the future?
Okay, first, it's a social process. You can't fix something that was wrong for 75 years in a year. Personally, I'm a yeshiva boy. I learned in yeshiva. I learn Torah every day. I don't see any contradiction between serving your country and being able to learn and keep halacha and keep and daven 3 times a day. There's no contradiction. The truth is, up till now, the army didn't really know how to draft Haredim. There were problems. Again, one of the shifting that is happening and what our set of values are. So the values were very liberal and postmodern and progress and all that. and they didn't really know how to eat the Haredim. The Haredim didn't know how to eat correctly the Israeli society, and it didn't work. They were here and there. First, the army needs as many. The army has to grow. As I said before, one of the big mistakes are that the army was downsized and they took a gamble. It wasn't סיכום מחושב. It wasn't um, a calculated. It wasn't a calculated. It wasn't a calculated risk. It was a gamble. We made a big mistake. We're paying for the mistake. The army has to grow. It has to grow with the Haredim. Again, if Israel is a people's army, we need everybody contributes with his values to a whole. And that's why the Haredim have to, and they're changing. There's now a brigade being called the Hashmonaim Brigade.
Right.
Hashmonaim reminds us of Hanukkah, and I think it's in the right direction. And it's a process which is at the end is gonna. There's no other choice. It has to work. But again, when you talk about DEI, I know that's a word which isn't very popular, but it also includes the diversity is also Haredim, and I think they have a lot to contribute to the army.
Now, the ultra-Orthodox will claim that the army is not set up for them, is not going to be able to create a life conducive to keeping their values. So you're on the insider perspective, you're in the army and you're a religious person in the army. So from the army's perspective, would you say the army is ready to accommodate as necessary?
The army is more than ready. It's happening. As we talk, it's happening. We already have close to 200 soldiers in the Hashmonaim Brigade. It's a Haredi brigade. Even not only that, on Shabbos, they let them walk. They put on jacket and tie, and if you want to wear your shtreimel, I don't know if there are any shtreimels there. And they have, like any other religious soldier in the army, they have the kosher food with any ashgacha that they want. Of course, they can daven 3 times a day. There are Torah lessons that every day. But again, it's a social change. If we don't understand that, you can't, as a high-ranking officer, how do you lead? You lead not from here, what you have on your shoulder. You lead from what you have, lead from what you have in your head, what you have in your heart. And we have to learn how to talk to them. We have to talk to them with their values. One of the things that I did many, many years ago is that their army values. I'm a big, I think the army values, the core of ethics of the army is very, very important, because when you draft from all walks of the Israeli society, then you have people who learned in yeshivot, you have people who grew up in kibbutzim. Everybody has their values, and it's very important that they keep their values. When you come to the army, it's not a melting pot. A melting pot turns everything to one. No, it's a mosaic. Everybody brings their values. But we talk on the code of ethics those are the values that guide us, whether you're religious, non-religious, atheist, Jewish, Arab, and so when the Haredim come to when the Ultra-Orthodox come to the army, they have to adapt to this code of ethics. One of the things that I did is I took the code of ethics and translated it to Haredi. In other words, there's nothing which contradicts the Haredi. You just have to know how to adapt to it. And again, like in life, not only in the army, many times you have values that contradict each other. So you have to find the mid road, which when you decide whether this value is more important or that value. But all the values you can again translate to the Haredi.
And when you look at conscripting an entire segment of Israeli society, what is the biggest obstacle right now? Do you think it's the leadership in the ultra-Orthodox world? Is it the young yeshiva boys who just are scared to go into the army? Can you pinpoint?
I can pinpoint it in one word: trust. Once there'll be trust, and many times also the Haredi leadership and the army don't say the truth. And of course, there'll be mistakes done. And one of the most important, like everything in life, part of a culture, a part of organizational culture is to learn from their mistakes. In other words, not to try to hide them. Many times in life, we spend so much energy trying to hide the mistakes instead of analyzing and learning from the mistakes. And once there'll be trust, then people will feel freely to engage in something which is so important. Again, from my personal experience, I learned in yeshiva before I went to the army. I was in Hesder and I came back to yeshiva after the army. My learning in yeshiva was much better when I came back from the army. You learn what we called a white night. In other words, where you don't go to sleep. You know how to go the extra mile. When you think you have no more strength and you're about and you can and you go the extra mile. Those are traits that when you come back to civilian life or go back to yeshiva, you can concentrate. Also, when you're tired, one of the tourist attractions in Peduel is called the Merpes Tamdina, the terrace of the country. The name was given by Arik Sharon because it's a unique place where it's the mountain ridge over the coastal plain, and you can see from Ashdod in the south till Haifa in the north, and it's very strategical. Not only that, you can see the airport, but I think what's more important is that it connects the past, the present, and the future. You can look also at biblical battles that happened in the time of Samuel, and you're sitting and you see that's the past. The present is understanding that if the Hezbollah would so the Hamas would be sitting with anti-aircraft missiles, no plane can land in Ben Gurion, and the nearest international airport is in Uvda, that's near Eilat. And the future, I think, we have to be there. There's no question that you can't. This is a strategical point, but that can't be given to. It has to be under Israeli sovereignty. And it's not only from a strategical aspect. When you're a 5-minute walk away from the place where there's a biblical battle between the Philistines and Samuel, and then later you have people in the time of the Mishnah who live there. It also gives us the moral right why we're there. It doesn't belong to somebody else. It's part of it. It's part of Greater Israel.